Okay, there's Andrew.
Hello. Hi.
Hello, hello.
And Andrew is not in New Orleans celebrating.
No, I'm not.
You're missing the Mardi Gras.
I've been to so many Mardi Gras, I really don't miss it anymore. It's really, have you been to it before? Have you attended?
No, I never have. I have some beads, but I never, that's as far as I got.
Yeah. It's really not where I am anymore.
Okay. Yeah. Well,
It's nice to catch a parade, maybe, 2 weeks before the actual day. They have parades in the evening at night, and it's nice to go see one or something like that. But the day itself is, most people are drinking their heads off. They're just getting lit, walking around. It's just crazy. So
it's probably safer not to go there.
it is, some areas are not safe to go into, actually.
Yeah. Oh boy. It's not on my bucket list, sorry.
Yeah.
I think I'm too old for it now. But we were talking, John was flying. It was his birthday. I don't know if you saw that on Facebook.
No. Oh, okay. Happy birthday, John.
Thank you, thank you.
Well, that's body-based knowledge we don't want to talk about.
Yeah, for the unborn. Yeah.
John is not anything at all. He's the same age as the rest of us, which is 100 zillion. Oh boy. Well, we'll see. So we got Sandra, but we don't have Jim. So I don't know what happened to Jim. So.
And Sandra, did you get the email with those Bajan?
I did. I didn't have a chance to open it up.
Okay.
I opened it just a little and read what you said. Thank you so much. I'll check them all out.
Okay.
Very, very good. Thank you. Did you fly a plane? You mean you went flying?
No. I fly indoor skydiving.
Indoor skydiving.
Yeah. It was like they put you in a tube, and the air is flying up at like, I don't know, 80 miles an hour or whatever, and you're flying. And then they take you on a high fly up to the top and back down, and it's pretty cool.
That's great.
Yeah, my son had done it now. This was his third time, and I said last time that I would do it. With the pacemaker and everything, I had to get it checked out to make sure, okay, can I do this? And yeah, I could, so.
That's right. Yeah. Oh.
Sounds really exciting, Gee.
Yeah, it was pretty cool.
Safe, too.
Yeah.
Lot safer than skydiving.
Oh, yeah, lots safer than skydiving.
Yeah.
Now I have a friend who just, lost a son-in-law skydiving.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Well, he was parachuting,
Wow.
not skydiving.
Yeah.
I don't know if anyone knows Wayne Lickerman, but he's a disciple of Ramesh Balsekar. And his sort of conversion happened when he was skydiving. He lives in California. And his parachute didn't open. And right before he hit the ground, he was just, full steam ahead towards the ground without a chute. The unopened chute trailing behind, it hooked onto a large power line, the chute, and broke his fall just a few feet from the ground. So,
Wow.
He survived. Changed his viewpoint towards life. Yeah.
Sounds like a sort of dramatic thing to have to do.
Yeah, it's really amazing.
Whatever it takes to wake up, I guess you have to hold out of this time. Oh boy.
John, I wanted to ask you, I have, when you do, for instance, YouTube, like if I have recorded books, like I recorded Das Boot, for instance, just as an example. if you would put that on YouTube, you need to get permission from the publisher, correct? Like publisher's rights. Yeah, I mean, you just can't do anything like that.
You mean to read it onto YouTube, you mean?
Well, just, like if for instance, like if I don't know, I just have a lot of stuff that I have that might, I thought it might be helpful for people, like when they drive into work or something, if they can just listen to or something like that. But I don't know if it can be put on YouTube. For instance, I recorded Selfless Self when I first got the book. I just read it, and recorded it. And, I had asked Charles, about putting it on YouTube. I said, like maybe if people would be driving to work or something, they just want to listen to it or something like that. But he said that, there's a problem with, publishers' rights. You can't just do that. So I was just, since you do so much with YouTube, I was just wondering if you had aware of all that sort of stuff. The requirements and limitations for that, what you can put on it and what you can't, basically.
John seems to have disappeared.
Oh.
Maybe he's having an internet issue.
It could be.
Oh. Oh.
I wonder if he knows he's disappeared.
Well, John's still there, but his body has disappeared.
Maybe he's flying.
I don't know. That Das Boden book, I just got it. My brother sent it to me.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's pretty thick. That's a lot of reading.
Yeah, it's there are two translations. Do you have the one? Do you know which one you have?
I don't know. I'd have to go and look. It's the one with the saint's picture on the outside.
Yeah.
The author.
And it's like a hard copy, right?
Paperback. No, paperback.
Paperback? Oh, okay.
Yeah. I don't know who published it. I have to go and look at it. But it seems quite voluminous.
Yeah, it's 200 chapters actually.
Oh my gosh.
There are 10. Well, there are 10 chapters, and in each chapter there's 10 subchapters. There's 20 chapters rather, and in each chapter there's 20 or 10 rather subchapters. So it comes out to be 200 chapters basically.
Oh.
They're not that long, but it is quite a book.
Yeah, I haven't started it yet because I wanted to read the history, which is in the prelude, in the beginning, the preface, and but I haven't had the time to sat there and just really look at it. So, but it's going to take me a while to get through it, I think.
Yeah. Well, it's the kind of book you can just pick up and read a little bit, and then just take you a year to read it. Actually, whatever.
Yeah. No, I have a zillion books. I have a lot of Ramesh Balsekar. And there's a guy going around now named Roger Castillo, and he is a real devotee of. He's a young guy, probably in his 40s. And, he gives satsang in India, and he's from Australia.
Oh wow!
And but he's got a lot of YouTubes out there, in which he's explaining, the Ramesh's teaching.
Yeah.
So it's kind of going into the next generation. So. Yeah, Ramesh didn't die that long ago.
Just a few years, I think.
Yeah, he was quite old. He was probably in his 90s.
Yeah. He was, I visited with him twice, actually. And, I found it very helpful at the time. I was just really going through a lot of stuff at that time.
Yeah.
Transitioning lifestyles and that. So, the thing about him, he was very clear. I mean, very, like his mastery of English is incredible. Just really, his way of putting things was really just incredible. And he's got a good book called Pointers. I don't know if you've seen that. Pointers, it's a book on the teachings of Nisargadatta Maharaj.
That looks like John.
Hey, John.
A small John.
That's funny. Yeah, it's small.
You have a little tiny picture.
What happened to you?
Okay.
John?
Okay.
You shrunk in size.
Yes, I've shrunk in size, and the power went out here.
Oh,
Wow.
Yeah. So I'm on the cell phone.
Oh, wow.
Oh, that's why you're small.
That's why I'm very, very small. Yes.
You haven't really shrunk.
I have not really shrunk. No.
I was gonna say the body said, "All right, you don't want to believe me that I'm gonna shrink on you."
Exactly. All right. I think there we go.
All right. Well, that's fine. Yeah, we can see you well now.
Hello, I'm right here.
Mhm, mhm.
Well,
So I'm sorry, Andrew. Before the power outage, you were asking me about
Right.
recording stuff on YouTube, right?
Yeah, uploading stuff. I have, I copied one of Ranjit Maharaj's satsangs. I converted a tape to an MP3. I have a lot of stuff I could put up. I don't know if it would be a distraction for people actually or not. Especially, I'm just asking the question basically. And I could put stuff up, but I don't know. First of all, I've never done anything on YouTube. I don't know what, I would imagine that there are certain requirements you have to go through. You have to open up an account and so forth. So,
I mean, but that's very easy. It takes like 5 seconds to open up. My son, who's 9, has a YouTube account.
Oh, he does. Okay.
Yeah. It's just like.
That's a new generation. That's
You're saying
Very,
it's not
very
too difficult.
yeah.
Very easy to set up. But I mean,
Yeah.
as far as like I've done bhajans and stuff like that, and I just put an image behind it and then upload it. I think Ranjit, that live at Ranjit Ashram, they put whole satsangs up from Maharaj and then just put an image up, So I don't see anything wrong with that.
Yeah. Yeah. Okie doke. So I'll look into that.
You're not
then.
trying to profit
I was,
from it. You're just like
Just wanted
sharing.
to run that by you.
Yeah, if you're not trying to
Exactly,
profit
yeah.
from it, you're just trying to share it, then I don't see anything wrong with it at all.
And what's about a book, like a published book that you would record and put up on YouTube? I mean,
People do that. There's this one lady who reads like
there's
chapters of I
no
Am That.
profit from my end,
Yeah, I mean, there's a one lady who
Yeah,
does
yeah.
that on YouTube.
I wonder if she got permission from the publisher.
I'm sorry, what?
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Just on a delay.
I wonder if she got permission from the publisher.
No,
Okay.
she just reads one chapter from I Am That, and I forget what her name, Shakti Diva or something like that, and you can go to her YouTube channel and she's just reading I Am That.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
That's good.
yeah, it's good for the car if somebody's traveling around and they just want to listen to something.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't make money off of it. That's then you run into copyright and stuff like that. But if you're just doing it for personal use and to kind of share with, the community, then I don't see anything wrong with it. No one's ever
That's
stopped
good.
me from doing anything like that.
That's good. That's good. It's good to know.
Just like Maharaj, the book stuff, I copy huge chunks out of the different, his talks live at Ranjit Ashram, that thing that I sent around to everybody that's like 200 some odd pages now. I
Yeah.
copy big chunks out of that. Ramakant Maharaj USA, copy chunks. It's just you can't try to sell or make
To
money.
sell. Okay. That's good.
That was one big issue I had with the Be With You when they were charging to read Be With You. That was, not to talk ill about that, but that was too much for, yeah. Because the truth is, once you've touched your selfless self, it doesn't make sense to desire money in any way, shape, or form, or desire to profit off your own self. And that invisible listener that's listening also, that's not going to, you're believing in body knowledge by far if you are trying to profit from anything.
Sure. Yeah, basically, it's just, the hours that I put into recording this stuff, I said, well, maybe someone else would like to hear it,
Yeah.
And, because I have a vision problem, so that's why I'm doing it. But there may be other people with the same sort of thing, or, as I said, primarily it's just, when you're driving a lot, like, especially if you live like out in the West, there's a lot of driving on the highways and that. So, you got time to listen and just sort of cruise along and listen to something, so that's what I was kind of thinking about. So anyway.
Yeah.
One more question, John. What happens when there's a government shutdown? Do you go to work or are you?
No.
No? Okay.
Oh, thank God I'm not essential.
Okay.
That's a freebie. Huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one of the questions I have is, reading Sagardat's book, Self-Love, The Original Dream. He asks, he says, one must come to know the cause of consciousness. And, I was wondering, if nothing is true, if there's nothing really exists, then there is no such thing even as consciousness. It's so there's no cause. Is that correct? Or, ultimately there would be no cause. Relatively speaking, like for instance, oh, there you go.
Power came back.
Oh, great.
We'll see in a little bit if I can get back on the internet.
Okay.
But you're saying the cause of consciousness? The cause of consciousness is your awareness of yourself. That's basically, when you trace the root cause of consciousness, it's you're becoming aware, or that I am exists, I exist. You, on your own, without utilizing consciousness, you just are. So you are the origin of consciousness. Consciousness appears to you, and then you kind of perceive consciousness through this idea that you have about yourself arising as I am.
I see.
That's why one thing with the flying thing that was really cool, I felt body like a lot, because I'm in this tube and I'm flying. I was still doing mind. When I was at the ashram, I told Maharaj that seemingly I can expand at will. And I thought that was kind of cool. Like I'm standing there, and especially during the bhajans, I was able to feel this expansion at will. But after this experience, I understood that no. That's why they say the neti and all is negative, because it's not actually expansion. It's the fact that you're everywhere, but your body experience is dissolving. So you're sensing yourself through body with a very light body touch. And in doing that, it was, so it's not that this body, as long as I have body consciousness or body awareness, I'll believe in an expansion or something that is in the positive sense. I'm expanding or I'm growing or something like this. And when I'm experiencing the touch of body, just to know that myself, that selfless self, it'll be in the negative of dissolving. Because it's literally retreating from the idea that there was a position in this world, in these objects, I no longer have a position. And when I know this, because there's no body consciousness going on, there is an automatic dissolving, because I know I'm not that. And that was a big thing. Like, it was like, whoa, because in the ashram, I felt still the touch of body, a body consciousness, or a body, that I am this body. I'm trying not to feel this body, but I'm the body not feel. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I felt the expansion in a positive sense from this body form, the feeling of presence expanding. But the reality, once you remain with your selfless self, you are taking the touch of body just to feel that self, but the body sense is dissolving, and there's no expansion. It's the dissolving of the body that was the point that you thought you were expanding from. So you can tell right away when you're from the selfless self position or the body position, because the body position there is a position, and these are all positive things that I'm saying. I'm expanding. I'm feeling less of this. I'm feeling more presence. But from the reality, I'm dissolving this sense of body presence, dissolving this sense of consciousness, dissolving this sense of world, and remaining with my selfless self. Hold on, I think I might be able to join them for real. Okay, let's try this. Now that we are, and then I won't be this little teeny weeny picture in the bottom. Okay, here I am.
Oh, but now I'm
in trouble. Oh, hold on.
I have my phone off here.
No.
Whoa. Sorry. Oh my God. Okay. There we go. I turned off the phone completely. All right. Now.
So from the body perspective, it's like the expansion is like an empty balloon blowing up. You know, the balloon is the body and it expands.
Exactly.
You're saying it's dissolution of the balloon, basically.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that was the first kind of time that it was seen in that way. I guess because being in that tube, it was like, okay, I can feel this body, but also it was cool because there was no nervousness about doing this activity or anything like that, because there was no body consciousness. There were no thoughts identified with, and there was not any kind of I'm going to hit this wall or whatever. It was just literally, it was just a very powerful thing. And when I got out of it, it clicked that, wow, when I'm still, and I guess that's how you can tell, are you still identified with body? Because you say, like, I feel the presence more strongly, or I feel this expansion, or any of these things in the positive, it's because I still am holding on to a pinpoint in this realm that I call world with these objects, and I'm still believing to be an object. But when I'm remaining with my selfless self, the sense is all in that neti, that dissolve, because the body is sensed enough that I can feel that, but it's dissolving. And all these things are dissolving, and body consciousness is not seen as like on top of or arising. It's seen as dissolve. And I think that's an important distinction.
Yeah. The reference point is the body, and it's going away. You know, it's dissolving.
Exactly, because you're everywhere. So because you really are everywhere, it's only that you have this body positioning, that you have this identification, like Maharaj says, this local identification, but it's not. And as you are more and more and more remaining with your selfless self through mantra and just being with your selfless self and really enjoying the being with your selfless self far more than anything that is external and remaining there, everything is dissolving because there's no more this is John and I am here related to table, related to this. No, it's more of a totality, and these are dissolved, and you're not feeling yourself expanding, you're feeling yourself dissolving. This once thought about, this is me, this is the pinpoint where I say I'm here, and this bottle is here in relation to this object that I believe myself to be. But then it becomes different, because this bottle and everything is there, but it's out here, and it's not. I'm everywhere, so I can't have a point in position in this way.
Yeah.
Keith has something. He said,
Yeah.
that apply to the expanding universe too? As for that sense of good feeling from expansion, I would figure one would get used to it. Then it doesn't feel so thrilling, but natural.
But again, the expansion is, and in the ashram, I felt that. I felt like this, like it expanded and then everything was inside that expansion, but there was still a touch enough of body to feel something expanding from. There is no expansion because it's everywhere.
Ah.
It's a dissolving of the objects in your own self, and you're becoming not unaware, but no attention is being paid to the objects that are within you. And it's dissolving any idea that you're one of the objects or how you might relate to other objects within yourself. So it can't be, and like I said, I guess that's the neti, you know, not this, not this, not this, because anything that you talk about in a positive way is adding something, which means there's something here that's perceiving something. But when it comes to remaining with your selfless self, all of this appearance is dissolving, dissolving, dissolving. You're not taking the touch of any of these things, like this body and how it relates to these other things. It's not an expansion or an awareness that's becoming more aware of itself. It's the dissolution of an idea and a concept and a belief that there was a specific point from where everything was arising. It's not true. There's no specific point. Let's see. Wouldn't that apply to the expanding? Oh, I'm sorry. Hold on. So wouldn't that relate to how to our senses and how it seems that the universe is expanding? Again, in order to have the sense of expansion, you have to have a firm belief that there's a body, that something is expanding, something is witnessing the expansion, but you're still considering something limited that's expanding. It's not like that. It's the totality that's dissolving this limitation.
Would that apply to the subtle body also, which is what the body you feel you have in dreams?
I don't know. I mean, I would think everything is just dissolving. There's no identification with anything. It's just all dissolved.
Yeah.
And yet it's still there, but it's not. There's no point for you to say, here I am and this is me relating to all these things. I mean, in a dream, you know, you're laying down, like Maharaj says, the entire dream world is projected from your presence. You're laying down. This pinpoint of consciousness, the same consciousness that creates the waking state, creates the dream state, and it's arising from that, but technically speaking, all of that would be dissolved, 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 dissolving that consciousness back to that original source in both waking and dream state.
But why, if everything's dissolved, then how come you're still seeing the world?
You are the world.
Yeah, it's not a separate thing.
Yeah. Okay, then you're seeing the world as yourself. I mean, That there's no
But
difference.
there's no self to see. It's not because there's no point.
Yeah, right.
You're
No point of reference.
yeah, there's no local identification. Your identification has gone completely universal as it is because there's no limiting it. There's no limited pinpoint place. The invisible listener, invisible, anonymous, unidentified identity. All of this presence that you are no longer viewing itself through the limitation. Still seeing everything, but not seeing it from a limited point of view or from a limited perspective. Like a telescope that somehow just widened out.
But
It's like the, yeah.
yeah, it would seem like you would have to have a vantage point, though, from seeing. If there's no, then what's the vantage point? You know, it's like if you're on top of a mountain, you're looking down and you're seeing the valley, but that's from the point of view of a vantage point. But if you're just seeing everything, then it's not like that, I guess.
It's like we talked about before, eyes in space.
Yeah.
Because there's so nothing, there's no consciousness, no thought flow, no nothing, no idea of even being in a body. It's a
You know, it's kind of like, I know that Nisargadatta in this book, Self-Love, he talks about we're not the body, we're not the mind, we're the consciousness. You know, and maybe it's just consciousness aware of itself. It's not like me as an individual aware of all this, but it's just consciousness with the individual dissolving, you might say. Just this shift of identification, you know, basically, which, it's not something that one can actually do themselves, but it just happens.
It's natural.
Just expanding into consciousness and the dissolution of the individual identity. And then there's a consciousness aware of its own content, which is everything, you know. Kind of like, I don't know, maybe like the breaking open of the seed, you know, like Jesus says, unless the seed falls to the ground and breaks, dies, and, you know, he's just a seed. It doesn't sort of realize the infinite, the transcendent, you know, the kingdom. So.
Early on in my practice many years ago, I had an experience where I was focusing hard on that's not it. And suddenly I felt a warmth go up my back and everything turned to beautiful white light and the world disappeared. I guess it could be considered a Kundalini rush. But again, I mean, this is a nice experience, but there had to have been a body type experience for it to warm, rush, and all of that. There's nothing there. It's so. I don't know.
It's impersonal, huh? Impersonal.
It's not like Maharaj says, the progressive steps, and I guess that seeing was something different. Like it wasn't. And again, it went back to the seeing of, like we're talking about experience, in the ashram, there was a feeling during the bhajans, and now it's understood as like the feeling of the body was dissolving in the moment of the bhajans. But from the body point of view, the body perspective, still having body consciousness and body knowledge, viewing this experience, there was a expansion, a felt expansion, like presence was expanding, and then everything was known to be in that presence. But the reality is the presence doesn't expand. You don't expand. You're everywhere. All of this is projected from you. So you're not in a specific point to expand. And you'll see as everything is dissolving that there's only your own self. You're paying so attention to your own self that the objects may be appearing, but they don't hold interest at all. They're not. There's no direction of your attention to any specific something, because there's no direction from a specific something that it would be directed from. And yet still, daily activities going about and all this, it's just that you dissolve this, Maharaj, I guess, like he would say, you took off the clothes and you're walking around naked. You're having no clothes. You're having no idea of yourself at all. There's no specific point from which other things are there. The interesting part of my experience is that the world disappeared. I felt as one with all. I do get much like you describe at times, but it doesn't last. That's because you take the touch of the body again. Whenever you're saying, again, it's not in a positive. It's not like I am getting this sometimes. It's always here, and whenever I'm not, it's because I've paid attention, or I've started to take the touch of body. I've taken the touch of that I am, and then the body consciousness and everything, mind, ego, intellect is arising on that. That's why I think when people say, like, I got it sometimes, and, I went for hours of this, that's only because you weren't getting it, that you were at your natural state. And then when you recognized, oh, this is happening, then again, you took the touch of something experiencing this. It's not a coming and going. You're always, there's no expansion because there's nothing there for you. Everything is everything. You're everywhere in all things. It's just when you take a specific point of view and view it from something that you're believing yourself to be, that you see yourself and other things. And then there can be expansion. But that neti, I guess, that's the only thing that I can think, is that everything, you're just dissolving, because you're everywhere. You're not limited to this body form. You may believe yourself to be a body that you're seeing through this body, but you're not. It's not true. Like Maharaj says, you're the power that allows the seeing to occur. And it's always there. The only time when we sit there and say, I lost it, or I was like that for a while, or when I meditate, I'm in this absolute samadhi type state. But that samadhi is there being experienced by something because it's believing itself to be something when it's actually nothing. And when it's nothing and you are nothing, and you're not taking the touch of a specific something, then nothing can be around. There's nothing, there is no expansion. There's no, it's things are being removed. Like Maharaj says, the layers of thoughts are being removed. The body knowledge is being removed. The body sense is being removed. The senses are being removed because they were just being added on before.
So did you say that we are like we're the power or the consciousness that allows the seeing to happen? that what you said?
But what Maharaja said, that the hearing, you're the power that allows the hearing to occur. You're the power that allows the seeing. You're the power that allows the speaking.
And it just happens through the particular body form that one, you know,
Yes.
that one is.
Yes. One's identifying with.
Open ability.
I like to call it open ability or potential. If I try to think of it, does that fit for you? Hold on. I like to call it open ability or potential. If I try to think of it, does that fit for you? I'm not sure I understand. When you say you like to think of it as potential, I guess at rest or in quietude, and then whatever movement is occurring, if you're talking, I'm not sure what you're speaking about. Okay, I guess I'm turning it into a sense of being in words. I mean, like Maharaj says, we use words to communicate, and truly we're using words to invite the attention of the invisible listener that can totally, completely relate with what is being spoken about, listened to, and spoken. It's speaking to its own self. You're speaking to yourself in various different forms. And using each form, you're providing the power for the listening in each one of these separate forms, spontaneously. I mean, imagine if all of us were like those little mannequin amusement park toy type things where we're sitting there just, you know, from here up, and a mechanical thing provides some energy to do some speaking and move the head and this kind of stuff. And if there's thoughts coming, and you are the power that's providing that. If you take yourself away from that mechanical object that you're looking at, it's just and then hello, this same thing. For me, open equals spontaneous. Yeah. It's spontaneous, meaning just that it's not thought about. There's no thinking process. There's no active action where you're thinking of doing something. Spontaneous is just arising. And it's just a movement. Again, back to the little mechanical figures. It's just a movement. All the mechanical figures are just sitting. The spontaneous energy comes to move the head this way, while at the same time the spontaneous energy comes for someone to speak, while at the same time the spontaneous energy that you are comes and provides the ability to type. But other than that, they're just mechanical things that are waiting for the electricity to power them, and that's it. Only separation is through the ideas and beliefs identifying with the thought flow of a specific form in the moment.
But the power itself only is you know, it's time bound. I mean, it'll go off eventually. So that's not ultimate reality. Is that true?
I mean, the power is you.
The power is the power. You know, me, the consciousness, maybe the. But ultimately, that will disappear.
The power.
Yeah. You know, like it's. I guess one of the distinctions, you know, and I don't know if it can actually be understood, because it's, you know, it's something which is ultimately beyond our comprehension. But power Brahman and Brahman, you know, like, you know, from what I understand, Brahman is consciousness. Brahman is everything. You know, it's that, it's the reality. It's the manifestation, which has no personality. It's not an individual. There's no individuals. It's just the happening, the manifestation. And then there's power Brahman, which does absolutely nothing. It has no relationship with that. So that power that appears as Brahman, you know, just that movement, the whole manifestation, that goes eventually, doesn't it? I mean, like, I guess what is the relationship between those two? You know, you know, one time I think I may have asked Ranjit something like, you know, I told him, I said, you know, with my background, you know, having been in, you know, sort of member of the Christian faith and so forth, I always thought like the Spirit works through us, you know, and you know, the Spirit works through us and we do what we do and so forth. And it's like being aligned with that Spirit and being, you know, moving away from any kind of selfish, self-centeredness and so forth, so that one can be freely used by the Spirit in one's activity. And he said, you know, no, that doesn't have anything to do with, he said, Spirit has nothing to do with it, with the ultimate reality. You know, there's just there's no relationship there. I mean, I'm maybe misunderstanding what he told me, but that's kind of like, I guess what I'm getting at. What is the relationship between power Brahman and Brahman kind of?
Qualities and absence of qualities.
Yeah.
That would be the first thing that qualities.
Yeah.
Qualities, Brahman. Mm-hmm. The manifestation, and total absence of any qualities. I think Nisargadatta Maharaj talks about like the black hole, the total absence of quality, in which all qualities can be perceived because it is qualityless.
From where does the movement arise? You know, like that's kind of like, if it's not real, it doesn't arise. In other words, ultimately, it's kind of like a dream. There's no such thing as anything happening. There's nothing really happening. There's no movement, actually. There's no arising of anything, because in the ultimate sense, nothing is happening. Nothing has happened. Nothing is happening. Nothing ever will happen.
For you, yes.
Yeah.
I think we talked about before the I am sense, the I am, the I exist, the Om, whatever you want to call it. That's the primary, and then all these things come from that, basically. Mm-hmm. And that rests back into where it arose from. And it arose by basically the space and movement, and I am, the existence. The presence is just, you know, spontaneous presence. That's you being felt through the idea of other, which is body form. And that's in the dissolving of this body form, then you take the touch of body, and it's not it's not local. It's not local. And mantra. Because the body knowledge, the thoughts, all this has to dissolve. Yeah, I kind of conceptually caught on when Ramakant says there is nothing, yet also nothing is here. Yep, because you are, like, again, sky. You know, there's nothing there but your selfless self. All of this is on your spontaneous presence. And you, the one that's listening, is beyond body form. Is holding the body as a touch and a sense of I'm this body, or even a sense of I'm losing touch with this body, I'm losing body consciousness, and again expanding. But all of this is appearing on you. And the wording is just for communicating so that you can sense yourself. There's a conveyance. Speaker and listener are one and the same. Speaker and listener are one and the same. There's a question that arises. There's a speaking that arises. There's an answer. There's a this. There's all these things that are occurring inside the invisible listener, which is you. And you're inviting the attention of the invisible listener all the time. And like Maharaj says, the speaking and all of that is basically just to keep conveying and inviting the attention of the invisible listener, because you're doing the speaking and the listener knows that it's the speaker. And then what is blocking this listening and speaking as one and the same is this idea about body. How deep is this idea about body? Is there still a body consciousness? Is there still body knowledge on this body consciousness? Is this not there? Is there still a touch and a feeling of being in a body? All these things are blocking the idea that the listener and speaker are one and the same. Like most people would say, this is weird. It's an undoing of everything that you believe had been done. And just returning to your natural state without the mind presents ideas and beliefs and thought in form, and you know yourself as formless. So all this is discarded. You're still doing your job and doing your duties, and the very activities and all this kind of stuff is still being done, but you absolutely know there can be no doer because you know yourself in a real sense, this formlessness. And all this form is appearing inside that. And then the more mantra, then the body knowledge dissolves, the body consciousness dissolves, the thinker dissolves, and then the touch of this body dissolves, and this touch of this I am or I exist dissolves, and then you're nothing, but everything.
It's like a little salt doll in the ocean, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly.
You know, it goes so much against, I think Keith has a comment there.
It's only weird from my usual perspective. Yeah, from how you've been viewing the world through this limited sense of self, and it's just not that way. You know, they talk about the wave, viewing itself as a wave, and then, you know, and if all the waves were together and they're headed towards the shore and they're like, oh my God, we're going to die. You know, when we get to that sand, we're going to die. It's going to be our end. I've seen it. Look at those over there. They're hitting the shore and dying. Oh, this is terrible. But there never were separate. There never was a wave. It's an ocean in movement. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Andrew.
No, I was just going to say, one of the things that came to me this week about, you know, like Siddha Rameshwara, I know in Amritlaya, he said something like, what is seen is not real, what is real is unseen. And that is like 100% contrary to our conditioning.
Hmm.
You know, in other words, what's not seen is real, and everything that is seen is not. Nothing that's seen is real, and that is so contrary to our conditioning. It's just like, it's like turning around absolutely and totally, completely, and going in a totally different direction. It just, it's just really. But he's basically saying the whole thing that we are formless.
Remain with that formlessness, observing form, and knowing that if you're formless, then form doesn't affect you at all. Form is appearing inside of the formlessness, because as formlessness, there can't be a separation, even with, as Ramakant Maharaj all the time says, the walls of a house, when they fall, there's no separation because the space is everywhere.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing. You remain with your selfless self, and absolutely the unseen. The unseen is you, and everything that's seen is appearing inside of you. And as the body consciousness and even the touch of this body dissolve, then you'll be seeing from your natural formless state without even the thought that you're seeing in form. And that's where there's the power of the seeing, the power that's providing the seeing. Maharaj uses the example about the electricity and all the lights and the fan and all that. Electricity doesn't know it's running the toaster and the microwave and the computer, and it doesn't know when it goes out either. Like the electricity just went out in the house. Electricity doesn't know it went out. It's still continuous. And then all of a sudden the lights come back on and it's flowing. But it's what, I guess, inert potential, like you were talking about, the pure potentiality with no place to send it, so to speak. And that pure potentiality is always there, ready to pop. I think it was Kathleen who said something about like the floor that she thought was the consciousness, and all the people that she was working with were kind of popping up out of that. And that's a pretty good example. This energy is moving around, and it doesn't know it's lighting the microwave and the fan and the computer and the lights and all this kind of stuff. It's just there. All everywhere. Yes, there are wires carrying it and so forth, and you're much different than that, because, again, if you compare yourself to breath, or I guess it's called prana or whatever, the breath, breathing in, breathing out, breathing in, breathing out, and that is the power and the energy that's running everything. And that's how the wind in space, like Andrew was talking about, the movement in space is due to that power, that energy. But you're animating and moving the objects in the space, but you're the space itself. If you thought about the space had life, basically, and Maharaj says, if at all you want to compare yourself with space or sky.
I started being able to go there on Saturday, but I'm not, it's in and out. Sometimes I'm just space, but then I collapse back into being Trish.
Yeah, just and mantra, because again, just from the seeing of anytime there's a positive of expansion, or I can reach this, or I can do this or something, then there's the touch of a body that's experiencing this, and it's the dissolving when you're using mantra and you're sitting, remaining with your selfless self, and then suddenly the attention goes back. Then you come from the natural back into the kind of the false dream state.
Yeah.
And mantra allows this so that this doesn't occur as often. And the spaces in between are just space. That's the reality. Like you're the space, and sometimes you feel the space from the perception of a limited form in that space. But in reality, you're the space, and this limitation is slowly being removed so that you can return to your original nature of the space.
And the mantra is the space too.
The mantra is movement in the space, yes. Inviting attention of the invisible listener. You and the mantra are one. And all the mind, ego, intellect, that whole machine will very much slow down because you're remaining with the mantra. And you start to see that, yeah, you're the, so all the thoughts that are about this limitation that is added on to you, that only by belief, are slowly, silently, and permanently erased using mantra, because you're paying attention to the mantra in a single pointed devotion to your selfless self, and inviting the attention of the invisible listener that I'm not this body, I was not body, I'm not going to remain the body. Body's not my identity. I don't know how in the world I thought that I was this body. I'm sky, I'm space. And it was only the ideas that I had for a time that I was limited in some way. And this limitation is slowly, silently, and permanently being removed off.
That's helpful. Thank you.
That's why literally it's neti, nothing. All these things, remove, dissolve, dissolve, dissolve. Whenever I consider a spiritual experience as something that I'm feeling or that's been added on, I dissolve. Because this experience is something when I'm not paying attention to myself, because for that moment, I created a limitation, a belief in this limited body form that's having some sort of reference to something else, an expansion, a lack of thought. I'm not seeing thoughts so much. But then again, I'm taking the position of something that seeing thoughts are there and what can be, and I'm giving up my space-like self.
Yeah. Yeah, the other day I was doing a little exercise, and I was doing the mantra while I was doing the exercise, and, it just really became obvious to me that there's a subtle ego there that wants expect something from this. It's like looking for that experience.
Yeah.
And I just remembered, like what Ranjit had said once, be supportless. There's just this absolutely supportless. I mean, it's like kind of like being in that apparatus that you were in, just with the air going up or whatever, no support whatsoever. That's it always, I'm always slipping back into self-consciousness, back into self-consciousness. And then, it'll get you when you're not even there, kind of, it happens. And then all of a sudden, it's immediately back into self-consciousness, and then you kind of evaluate that and, say, oh, that was a nice experience or whatever, or I didn't get what I wanted, there's a certain kind of sense of disappointment and so forth. So,
yeah,
it's just really,
yeah, the evaluator is the self-consciousness evaluating what it was like without the self-consciousness, but using self-consciousness to evaluate the lack of self-consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
Like the thorn trying to get rid of the thorn.
Yeah. But and again, anything that's added, anything that can be positive, like I'm seeing less of the world, or I'm starting to see the world as myself, or anything like this that's positive is from the position of something. But the negative of it's dissolving. There's a dissolving of this touch of body, that it's no longer like this constant that I'm this limited something. I'm this that's taking the touch of this body that has dissolved, but it's from the other perspective, not here out, but from here to here out. And just remaining with your selfless self without any attention going out. The entire world is projected on your spontaneous presence. All the forms that are seen are just, including this form, are just inside the space that you are. It's as if the space was alive and everything in it was not, and these things were moving around by the space's energy, perceiving that it's one of these limited guys carrying like a chess piece on the board. You're moving this piece, you're moving that piece, only it's millions or billions of things being moved in the space that you are. One space, all the things that are in it.
That's really helpful, the neti, because the game being played with the mind here is the mind coming in and trying to own.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then that's really good.
Yeah, like I said, the thing was, and I remember clearly in the ashram, and I thought, wow, this is pretty awesome. And seemingly I can do it at will. But it's not like that. It's only if you have a perceived limited form that you can feel an expansion and that you can do it at will. The truth is that you're everywhere, so you never expand. It's dissolving the point of reference from where at first you said the world was expanding from. And the bhajans are dissolving the body, the sense of body. But it will appear when you believe yourself to be the body that's dissolving, that it's expanding. And in reality, you can't expand, but the body is dissolving, that you believe inside you is that limited, that point on the map that's no longer there. The local identification, as Ramakant Maharaj says. And that just I, it's taking the touch of body, but absolutely the space taking the touch of body rather than body experiencing itself as space.
Call from Louisiana. Call from Louisiana.
Oops, hold on. Trying to get the... Thanks for pointing that out, because yesterday I felt like I could kind of do it at will for a little while. Yeah. Yeah, and I got caught up in doing that. I thought that was really cool. Every time I would like get out of the car and then, wow, I'm everything. And all this. But then it was realized that there's still the touch of body from where it's expanding. The truth is, it's everything that's not expanding. It's the dissolution of the limitation, the limited form that there was a belief in.
And when the body dissolves, for instance, or that identification dissolves totally, then there's no experience of expansion, I guess.
No.
Because there's no one there there's nothing there to actually know expansion or the opposite of expansion, shrinking, whatever.
Yeah, it's literally like just these eyes are in the active space, and space is actively moving this form, but no longer saying this form and how these things relate to that form. I mean, there's still like, okay, this bottle is here and I'm drinking, but there's just no, there's no cognitive process of any kind of a form taking a position based on other forms around it. It's just, there's not a, you see your hands, I'm sure, in different various times in meditation, you've looked at your hands and you can absolutely know that this is not, it's almost like a piece of meat has been kind of added to your body, because there's no identification with the form, or the seer is not identifying with the form that is being seen from.
It's kind of cool that you could do your job from nowhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not here, but the job is being done.
Yeah. I mean, what's right in front of you? You're doing this and doing that and all that. And boss can come and say, oh, I need to talk to you about such and such a project. And they're speaking and listening going on. And there's not even a like, oh, I'm space and all these things are occurring inside. There's just no, because again, that's taking touch of body and saying, oh, I'm the space, I'm expanding, and all of this is inside. And that's a good progressive step to see, like, all of this is occurring inside myself. I'm communicating in these two forms with myself and this and that. But still, that's kind of a mental mind type thing. The idea is that you're not there. And yet you're fully there.
You're not there as an individual, you're there as consciousness, I guess. Or not even
and not even that. Just you're there as, again, like I can look at this screen and see this body outline and all of that, but in this perspective, it's just like two eyes. There's not a what's here. And that's why there's no sense of something that something could expand from. In order to have the expansion, there would have to be, oh, I'm limited to this body form. This body is related to this room and all of that, and I can expand. But the truth is that selfless self that you are is everywhere, and this is appearing inside of it. And when this dissolves through, the conceptual belief that I'm this limited form dissolves, then you're just in your natural state without any additions to you, qualityless.
It's like you're becoming one with the divine. I mean, that's what it is, right? Isn't it? We don't really know, but
I don't know. It's just the. I mean, you could say, I guess, there's no space for labels of any kind, and because in order to label them, there would have to be how it relates, and it's just not a. It's just not like that.
that's kind of one of the mistakes of religion, that I'm over here and God is over there.
Yeah, well, and like Maharaj says, God, Brahman, Paramatman, Master, these are labels upon you. These are labels that have been given to you. Just as the labels have been given to you, John, Sandra, Andrew, Trish, Kathleen, and Keith. You know, those are labels that have been given to you too. Those are labels that are local, like Maharaj says, local identification, physical identification. God, Brahman, Paramatman, Master are labels of more non-local identification, but there's still an identification of something. There's still something trying to label something, which means there's a something that has to label so that it can comprehend. There's no comprehension because there's nothing to comprehend, nor is there any somebody here to comprehend. Only when there's a limitation can there be comprehension and a label that's needed to comprehend this object that I'm labeling in relation to a me. That's, I think Maharaj says, sky doesn't know its sky. Earth doesn't know its earth. Presence doesn't know its presence. Because there's nothing that it's there that can be related to, I'm labeling this as it relates to me. If I believe myself to be a limited body form, then I can relate sky. I can label sky. Sky is in relation to me, that big thing above me. But if there's no idea of a limited sense of self, then there is no need for labels. What would label where? What would label on what?
The label only works in the movie.
The label only works when there's a local identification that you're sitting there and saying, here's John, there's Sky. Here's John, here's a table. But if there is no limited sense of self, if the selfless self is fully knowing itself, using body form, but absolutely only just I, no touch of body form, no sense of a limited something, then there can be no labels, because from what position would that labeling be occurring from? Who's labeling?
That's some pretty serious dissolution. You know, you get to that point. It's really good.
Yeah, there's nothing, there's no labeling. And like Maharaj would say, prior to beingness, were there any labels? No. After leaving the body, were there any labels? No. Was there any need for a label prior to beingness? Was there any need for names prior to beingness? Needs, labels, and names came along with the body form through communication of I'm somebody communicating with something or someone. But prior to beingness, no need for names and labels. After leaving the body, no need for names and labels. It's only when the local identification of I am this limited body form that needs to communicate is there a need for labels and names. Names to identify the different body forms. Imagine that all of us were the selfless self and there were no names to any of these body forms. Or you just said selfless self. Every single body that you see, his name is selfless self. Which selfless self are you?
I'm number 5. Do you sometimes get identified, John, or do you always just stay as aware as selfless self?
I don't know.
That's a good answer. I don't think there's very much identification.
There's a John who's going to answer that.
I don't think any of us could answer that.
I think you just answered it.
Yeah.
Trish is going to laugh herself into enlightenment.
There you go.
There you go.
Laugh at Buddha.
Well, obviously, none of us could give that answer. I love it. It's a great answer.
We're just going to turn on and everybody just gonna laugh.
That's a mindless laugh there.
It really is a joke. The whole thing. You know, if you were to create a movie and, you know, have, it's a really kind of ridiculous joke.
There's one teacher I like, Stephen Harrison, who has said that you can't get rid of yourself, and in a sense I see that I can't get rid of selfless self. Well, you are, again, selfless self is the label that's been placed on you. You know, they can say I am or spontaneous presence or any of these things. Selfless self is a label that's been placed on you, again, because at the time you believe yourself to be a body that requires labels in order to relate to how it relates to the body you're believing yourself to be, that you are not. The true you can never get rid of because it's you. All the things that have been added to you that you are not can easily be gotten rid of. And mantra is the key to do this. I think Maharaj says, where all experience ends, there you are. Accept your selfless self. There's no God, no Brahman, no Paramatman, no Master. Nothing is there. All the somethings that you can perceive are nothing. Just you.
Did you say that all the some things that you can perceive are nothing but you?
Well, it is you. All the some things that you can perceive are appearing on your spontaneous presence, arising from nothing.
Mm-hmm.
They'll all return back to nothing. Everything you can perceive, everything through the senses and all this, because the I am is required to get body to have senses and all this information and body, ego, mind, intellect. So the nothing, all the things that you can perceive are the something arising in the nothing. Arising in your spontaneous presence. Even the sense of presence is something. And that's why when you're talking about consciousness, consciousness appeared to you. Because in order for consciousness to appear, there had to be something there prior to consciousness, and that would be you.
That's the knower, correct?
Prior to beingness and after leaving the body. That's the knowingness, the knowledge, the formless knowledge. With nothing to know other than itself, so when there's nothing to know, then there's no knower, no knowledge. A potential knower, but with nothing to know. Like in deep sleep, the I am goes into quietude, there's nothing to know. It's objectless knowledge. Until you were, I guess, a baby and you were able to see I'm an object related to other objects, that's when subject-object knowledge came in. Whoop, hold on. Let's see. Nisargadatta has said the wisest thing you can say is, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, because you're not using anything to have any perspective from, so there couldn't be a perspective of any kind. If there's something to know, then there's someone who knows it. There's a position being taken that I know this related to who I believe myself to be that I am not. So the space can't know anything. The space doesn't even know the objects in the space. Only someone perceiving objects in space can know that there's both space and objects. And the space perceives itself through the objects in the space, meaning you. These little limited forms are being, what is this? Oh, sorry. My internet popped up and I don't know what it said. But every positive spiritual experience is adding something on. There has to be something that is experiencing these experiences, rather than the dissolving of something that was noticed using form formlessly. You know, if there's a bunch of things if you have on a table 6 objects and you start removing them, you're noticing their absence. Although it's creating more space from the perspective of the other objects that are remaining. Once they are gone, you don't notice them. Exactly. And only if you believe yourself to be an object in perceiving in relation to the objects that are in the space can you notice their absence is enlarging the space. But the space was always there. You know, you could say, okay, there's 6 bottles on a table, and it looks like there's a very limited space between these bottles. But that's not true. The space is everywhere. These bottles are inside of that space. And when you remove them, their absence is noticed only from the position of, I'm here noticing that these bottles, one has been removed. But the space itself isn't noticing what's coming and going inside of it. I think that's why Maharaj says, you know, if the walls come down, does the bathroom sky go to hell and the ashram sky go to heaven? Space is space, sky is sky. Space doesn't know it's space, sky doesn't know it's sky. Objects appear inside the space and can only be perceived from the point of view of another object. Oh, he said, come on, Trish, isn't that funny?
Andrew thinks it's funny.
No, I was laughing at Keith's comment.
Right.
So basically what's, like the something that's perceiving something else, neither are true. So from the perspective of space, there's just nothing there.
Yes.
So it's like a big delete of the whole thing.
Yes. Dissolving.
Dissolving, right.
Yes. Because you can't just say, okay, there were bottles there and then whoop, there's nothing. Because it's kind of, okay, these these things that I've been seeing in this way of seeing is dissolving, 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 dissolving. All these different, like Siddhar Rameshwar Maharaj talks about, these different bodies. The subtle body is dissolving. The grosser body is dissolving. Everything's just dissolving, dissolving, dissolving. And all of these were just added on and are not needed. And if this body were to fall in this moment, there's no knowing of this. And the space wouldn't even perceive the absence of the object that was in it, because again, the only reason the space is perceiving anything is using one of the objects that's in itself. Say that again. Whoa. You have to watch the video. Again, I'm sorry. There'd have to be like a mental of, okay, what was, and then it's going to lose its
Gotcha.
Sorry, I'm not trying to be rude. It would just be, that would be giving, like, trying to create a thinking process to remember what was said, and it would lose whatever was said.
Which brings up a point, when we sit here talking and listening to what you're sharing and so forth, there is a process of thinking about it. And I know that I think Nisargadatta says, just listen and don't think, basically. And then whatever is meant to sprout will sprout by itself.
Yeah.
Because we're using the mind, which, that's what I get from what you just said, basically.
Yeah, it's not, because it's the listener and the speaker are one and the same, and that's the recognition and the projection. That no thinking about, just like when you're reading, and Maharaj says, read the reader, that's what it is. You're reading, but you're not reading with the desire to acquire knowledge. You're reading the reader, the presence. You're sensing your own self, and you're keeping in touch with yourself. You're disregarding the mind, ego, intellect, and reading the reader. So it's not an intellectual, like Maharaj says, it's not a dry spiritual knowledge. It's literally the selfless self speaking to its own self over and over and over and over. And without mind. As a matter of fact, a lot of the things that are probably being spoken about should stop a thought process rather than allow a thought process to build from a concept that is like, oh, this concept, what does that mean? And then let's do this thinking about this. It's not. And that's why everything from this perspective, it's just like flow, flow, flow. There's nothing, and somebody will say, "Oh, how about this or that?" And it's not a thinking of, "Oh, I read this and how this relates to this or this." It's just whatever is just speaking. Maharaj speaking through that formless sense, through form, in all the forms.
Maybe the attempt of the mind to understand is what's preventing it from going through.
Yeah, it's like listening to music.
Yeah. Yeah, if you kind of tune in and don't worry about what it means, just be taking it in on sort of a meta level, not the usual way you'd listen to somebody lecturing about, economy or something like that.
Right. Well, it's pointing to you. Like you're concentrating on the concentrator or concentrating on the listener that's listening rather than what's being said. And in this moment, we're all kind of one-pointed. We're all one-pointed on one. We're talking about selfless self, selfless self. It's all about selfless self. And all of that is to invite the attention of the invisible listener that's using all these various forms to see. But also earnestness in open observation seems to bring insight or opening or stopping. Yeah, I mean, it's satsanga, like they say, whenever all the beings are together single-pointedly desiring truth, that there's the invisible listener. I think in Andrew in Christianity, whenever two or more are gathered in my name, there I am. And that's here, that's conveyed, and just remaining with our selfless self, disregarding body knowledge, and whatever's being spoken about is in the daily experience of each one of these forms. That's Facebook that's popping up. Good grief.
Missing you. Well, maybe that's good enough for tonight.
Good. Sounds good.
So next week then?
Sounds good.
Sounds good.
Thank you. Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Okay, guys. Good night.
Good night.
At all.